the way that it's like the news has came around to talk about Texas, I feel like because of how mismanaged and like how some of the leaders acted, it just I think the spotlight went straight to Texas almost.
Hmm.
And everybody's
Yeah.
trying to figure out what the hell happened, and like with good
Right.
reason, of course, with the how the power is set up, and elected officials apparently thinking it's a good idea to go to Cabo, or not Cabo,
Cancun,
fucking
I think.
Mexico, Cancun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thinking it was a good idea to do that. And then when they came back, or he came back, it was like he didn't even quarantined. And then he did a presser where he was like, "Here's a box of Dasani water."
Oh my God, I didn't even know he did all that.
Yeah,
Oh, jeez.
there was
No,
a
yeah,
whole.
the
Mhm.
whole Texas, it was just bad. Like it was a failure on so many parts, but it just goes to show that, yeah, it just goes to show that we get it. America's, like you can't get more American than Texas, really. You
Mhm.
think of freedom and you think of, independence from government
Mhm.
oversight.
Right.
You want to run things your way, which I'm totally for, as long as you could do it, you know, responsibly.
Or
And
be very measured, because like yeah, if you do a full tilt, like no government oversight of anything, you'll get a situation like this. But
right, exactly.
if you over govern, then like nothing gets done. So like,
Right,
what's
right,
that balance? Like, what should a government be involved with, or what can be privatized, and like
right,
vice
right,
versa? I
right.
think over the FCC and the whole internet situation, like I forgot what it was, but it was like net neutrality when all of
Right.
that would have
Yeah.
happened. It's like when a service becomes so ubiquitous within a culture, within a country, within a political system, then does it make sense to hand it off to an organized government, or does it make better sense to keep it privatized? So like
Right.
what's the
I
give and
think
take
there's
there?
got to be
Yeah.
a balance, and I do not speak with any authority or
Of
any
course,
like
yeah.
understanding of it, but I would say you got to have a balance because just like you were saying, too much of either side would just it would be either too uncontrollable or too like way down and like yielding. Like you can't work it anymore. It's
Hmm.
just impossible. I think the sad part is just like in Texas, it was the common folk who suffered. It wasn't the
Yeah.
guy who could afford to fly his, kids out to Cancun. It was the everyday person who would be stuck there
Hmm.
5 days without electricity and without an ability to warm themselves. So
Yeah.
I think a bunch of people died. A
Hmm.
huge amount. Like imagine surviving coronavirus just to die to a freak snow snap, like a cold snap. And it's crazy. Like I couldn't believe that that happened in Texas of all places because it's so far south. It's
Hmm.
like all the way down there, but it reached down there. Like the polar vortex geographically reached all the way down there, and they just didn't have the infrastructure to support the demand.
Hmm.
And it was just so sad because like literally states neighbor, I watched a Vox video about this
Of course, it
literally
would be a
this
Vox
morning.
video. Me and Callie
Yeah,
always
I
say that.
watched it
Of
this
course.
morning, so
Yeah.
I am educated. No, but it was so good because I was like, wow, so all these other states, obviously, when this polar vortex came down there, it
Hmm.
wasn't like these other states didn't get hit by it, but they did, but they were part of a grid that allowed them to, siphon energy from other states, and they were
Hmm.
able to keep their citizens warm and safe. Whereas Texas, because of its, you know, off the grid, I guess you would call grid,
Hmm.
they weren't able to do that, and it was just it costs a lot of people their lives, and that
And
really sucks.
and it's like a very short-sighted sort of proposition there, because it's like the I guess in the mind of our lizard brains, where we think that, oh, Texas equals heat, Texas equals like
Right.
desert, right?
Barbecue.
And barbecue and like live music, right? Especially in
Right.
Austin. But because there's this notion that it's always going to be that warm, there's no insulation on pipes, and building is cheaper there, but there's a cost, there's a hidden cost to all of that, the on
Right.
regulations, and and the standards for plumbing and electricity. So
Right.
like
house
sort of.
infrastructure, like they're built so like cheap because they don't have to be as insulated as
Hmm.
houses in other states.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then that this happens. That's why everybody's freezing to death
Right.
because
Well, what really boggled me was the fact that when once again, I'm stating my reference is the Vox video. I'm not gonna say Wikipedia. Like I'm not making this up. They cited this, but they said this has happened before in
Hmm.
1980 something, and
Hmm.
it was before I was born, so I have no experience over it. But like politicians and scientists and officials had knowledge that this has happened before,
Hmm.
and if history can repeat itself. It's not like the winters are going to get warmer only. They can get extremely cold and they can reach really far down. So
Hmm.
I think, I mean, this all comes back to climate change and everything else as well. But it just sucks that they were so unready
Hmm.
for this, that it just, yeah, so unprepared that it cost people lives. It would have just been like, oh, like, they ran out of energy for a day, but then people were able to figure out how to get energy back, and that was it. Like it was damages and people were cold for a day. No, it was cold for 5 days. People
Yeah.
had to melt ice in their pipes to get them, just to flush their toilet, just to get drinkable water because they couldn't leave. It was crazy. I was like, wow.
people are running out of food.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
it was a it was a disaster, and I couldn't believe that actually happened.
Yeah, it's weird to like live through so many events that are like that where
Hmm.
it's just crazy to witness.
Right.
Like we're not there or anything, so I can't imagine what it's like to have been in Texas at the time. But just watching it happen is crazy. Like how many once in a lifetime events can you live through? Right?
Right.
We're
I
gonna
think it's an exercise in for folks on the outside, watching a country like the United States kind of deal with this. It's like it's it's a test bed for like the world, because each state more or less governs itself. Of course that there is the federal government, on top of everything,
Right.
but each state either opts in or opts out, and Texas was, I guess, the only state that opts out within the lower 48.
Right.
So I think the thing that's also kind of that I feel like it's overlooked a little bit about Texas, because it's been kind of abhorrent, like the way things were managed, and the amount of people that passed away through both, you know just the cold, and like all the stuff that would happen because of the cold. Like I think days or a week before the huge cold snap, like I think 15 people died with like 100 car plus pileup on like
Yeah.
I-15, or like the state route that they have there. And it's like these things will happen, and that, yeah. And what I was trying to get at, for my initial point, is that it kind of took away from like states like Mississippi and like all of these other states that was in the vicinity of that cold snap. And like there are other states that are dealing with water issues that came from that cold snap that Texas had to deal with. And the
Right.
and
people died in all the states, Ohio, Tennessee. People were dying all over, but everybody eyes were all on Texas. Yeah.
Right.
yeah, all eyes on this one state that I guess was more mismanaged than, I guess, the other states. But
Right.
yeah.
Right. It just sucks, like you can't you have no way of defending what happened because they had info about it possibly happening, and like literally I actually watched the Fox interview between Hannity and what's it called, or what's his name, the official who flew to Cancun, Ted
Oh,
Cruz,
Ted
sorry.
Cruz. Yes.
Yeah. And he was like, he was, yeah, right, he was just like Hannity was just like leading him, was like, oh yeah, you tried so hard, and you did your job, and like you coming back here, like that's really admirable, like blah blah blah. I was like, man, you're just not, you're throwing softballs, you're drawing the narrative, you're not even asking questions. So it sucks because we know which side they're on, the right
Mhm.
side, and they're like, yeah, there's no global warming and there's no climate change, and what we're doing here, yes, it was a disaster, but it wasn't my fault, like I had to come back because now I feel like I have a duty to fulfill, for my state, but coming back here afterwards as an afterthought, it's just bad luck all around. It just didn't work out well. I feel like there's just no way for us to, I guess, redeem any of their actions.
Well, I think that's the yeah, we can point to that and say that's a bad look too. I think the biggest thing is also like, what do you sign up for as a leader?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, AOC raised like $1 million, didn't she?
Yeah.
For Texas?
Yeah.
Like Ted Cruz is a fucking.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Those are her.
Hey, no cussing.
those are her responsibility, but she saw people suffering, and as an elected leader, she stepped out and did something about it.
Right.
Instead of flying out of the country.
Right.
And she's
now we're going into like, okay, bipartisanship versus partisanship stuff. Yeah, right. Right. Well, I'm just saying this is gonna segue into bipartisan and non-bipartisan stuff about our country.
In terms of just pointing out leadership, and also the if folks didn't hear, Callie was referencing AOC, a representative from New York, a completely different state coming in and raising money. But there was a comment that was made through Joe Rogan's podcast. It's like, oh, what is Ted Cruz supposed to do? Well, what is he supposed to do as a senator? To come by and kiss babies and like just politic? It was all, well, no. As a leader, you're supposed to, either at the very bare minimum, comfort your constituents, and on another end would provide services or allocate funds or do something that is tangible for those communities that are suffering the most, like folks like AOC, right? Or Beto and local in Texas. Like they did something to better the conditions of the people living in those states. And I've had to talk to some family members about that. I was like, well, he was planning in this vacation already. Well, look, it's besides the fact that basically the neighbors ratted them out and just said, hey, look at this, look how kind of an asshole they were. Besides that fact is like when you're as a leader and there's a tragedy or like a world changing event for your constituents, you got to do something. And leaving your state to go to another country for a vacation is not that something.
Right. Well, it seems pretty typical of what a seditionist would do, because I mean, he is a leader, but he literally was part of the crowd that said, we don't believe that election results are accurate. Like these were not accurate, and I have no proof of why they're not, but they're not accurate, and I'm just gonna keep arguing that even after they verify everything. After Mike Pence signs it. After your party's VP signs it, and he's still like, yeah, no. And the best he can do, like what you were saying, like what can that leader do? He could step down. Yeah, he could step down. That's resign and give someone else who is fit for that position. Like that's the easiest thing he can do, because he was completely useless. I feel like. Yeah, the least. I mean, he could do more.
Well, yeah, that's also bringing in the whole seditionist and like the basically rubbing Trump's back when all of what had happened in January 6th. He's basically exonerating a president that incited a riot. But I think on the other end of that, this whole movement to recall Gavin Newsom, and when I had a conversation with family about comparing Ted Cruz and like what he could done, well, think about what other leaders that has the best intentions. You got to imagine if you don't do anything, you get Ted Cruz. But if you do a lot and you're trying to listen to as many experts as many folks as you can, like Gavin Newsom, like. For him to do nothing, that's a bad look on him. For him to do as much as he can, that's another bad look on him. So as a leader, what are you going to do?
Right. I think in the long term, in the best way to look at it is you have to do what's good for everyone, like the overarching good. You're not going to please every single person, and certain factions are never going to be happy, but what is the best thing for everyone? It has to be obviously be based on scientific data and by experts. Like you listen to them and you weigh the outcomes. If you open too early, people are going to die. If you close down everything, people are going to die because they have no way to feed their families. Like
Right.
you have to find a balance. And where do you allow people to work? Where do you allow it to reopen? What numbers are we looking at? It's a huge undertaking to crunch those things. But it's always, I guess, safer to err on the side of safety
Mm-hmm.
and be like, let's stay closed a little bit longer. And we're in the 21st century. I feel like there's ways for people to get aid to to our communities. We're not gonna like completely starve. Like, sure, mom and pop stores will shut down. They will run out of business, and it sucks. Like, we're not saying it doesn't suck. It's obviously it sucks that
Mm-hmm.
businesses run out, and it's not his fault. It's not him trying to be like, I want all of these businesses. I want AMC to like run out of business. I want malls to close down. It's not like Democrats govern like Governor Gavin Newsom wants to like make life harder for us. It's him trying to protect us and save our lives. That's the ultimate goal.
Mm-hmm.
But he's doing these things where people are looking at it and they're like, "Well, I want to eat out with my friends." And why is that a bad thing? Like I hate this guy. Let's recall him because he's affecting my life. And it's like, no, you got to think more than just about yourself. And I guess this is the whole argument because
Mm-hmm.
in the end it's about selfishness or selflessness. Can you put others ahead of yourself? And that's what this pandemic really showed. Like there are a lot of people who cannot do that. They put themselves ahead of everyone else, and they're risking the lives of so many. And that's probably why we still have such a high infection rate. Like we're just there's a huge faction of us who don't listen and don't follow like rules, and we just can't get this disease under control. I mean, I'm sure the scientists at the CDC are literally trying every day to try
Mm-hmm.
and figure out why is the number still so high and why is every other country like dropping or plateauing or drop, and they're just doing much better than us. And it sucks that it's taking us more. We're at a year now. This is
Mm-hmm.
March again, so it's crazy how we haven't moved forward as a country. And it just goes to show, like you were saying, states govern themselves. And I think that's, it comes down to the culture in each state, and people within that state don't listen to like our state, California, just has so many people who don't like Gavin Newsom. And then there's people who like him but also like dislike the fact that he reopened again. Like, oh, he
Mm-hmm.
closed down, awesome, but then he reopened, oh, I hate him. It's like you can't do anything to please anyone. But it's it's the thought, I guess, the idea behind it, why he was doing it in the first place. It's to save
Mm-hmm.
lives. And we all knew, like you could tell people are dying left and right. It sucks.
I think
California has such a huge economy and we have so many people, but
mm-hmm.
it's everyone's dying because we're open.
Yeah, and we're such a big economy to the point that we can also, on top of the proposed 1,400, give another 600 for folks that need it, right?
Yeah.
Like there is, I think, just past like a week or so, I haven't really got an update, but
Yeah.
like where we have a big enough economy where we can do that.
Right.
And for the conversation about leadership, when it was proposed that there was going to be a recall of Gavin Newsom, the first time I saw that was sometime in August when we're driving down a car from Seattle. But then what's the alternative? What's the alternative to Gavin Newsom? Like, we've seen other states go through it. We've seen other states that handled it, and we've seen other states that didn't handle it. Then if you're saying that in California is too restrictive, then what's the alternative?
Right.
How many
Well,
people?
the alternative is
Yeah.
we're back in Texas because that's what their governor just did. I think 2 days ago they decided to open the whole state.
In
Everything's
addition to
open.
other states like what, South Carolina and like in some of these, it's not strictly southern states, but like there are states right now, and I think the most northern one is Montana, that said like, yeah, we're not doing it. We're not doing mask anymore in Montana. So
I just don't know
Yeah.
what they're expecting, because it's not like everyone's vaccinated in Texas all of a sudden. Like,
Mhm.
it wasn't like there was a carpet bomb of the vaccines on all the communities. There's
Mm-hmm.
still people who can carry it and are probably carrying it. And so you open this whole thing up, and everyone decides, oh, well, the governor says we're good to go. Maybe there are people, a faction of people who are like, I'm gonna, stick with my common sense. I'm gonna wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna socially distance. But there's gonna be people who are like, finally, we get to do what we've all been waiting.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay, I can hear you. Oh, so is that like a
I think
Bluetooth?
my headphone
Okay.
just turned off. I don't know why.
Oh, it's not like we were idle or anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I touched anything.
Okay. Well, wouldn't it be a better conspiracy than now that you mentioned carpet bombing, that the snow was a vaccine that vaccinated all of, like, from Montana all the way down to Texas? I would rather have that conspiracy than Bill Gates apparently colluding with China to make fake snow. So I would rather have.
From the
Ooh.
Jewish space lasers.
Yeah, we're trying to hide that space laser. They can't see through the snow, can they?
Oh gosh.
You believe in the moon?
But it's funny about Texas reopening, because on that same day they had the headline that I think Austin had
Mhm.
every known COVID variant. Like, that was the first day they had officially like notified that.
Right.
So it was really like people saw those two headlines like side by side. Like, Austin officially has every single known COVID variant, and also Greg Abbott is reopening the state
Right.
with 0 masks, and everyone
Right.
was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think Callie like literally looked it up as soon as she saw the headline that he was reopening, and she was like, "Wait a minute!" And she
No, I
looked
was
up
just looking
graphs.
into it. Yeah.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
looked up graphs, and she's like, "Look at this graph," and it's like right when they're like coming back up.
The country as a whole had been plateauing in cases, but that's not happening anymore. I think the trend
Right.
is going upward again, but the country as
Mhm.
a whole had been plateauing in cases for a few weeks, and Texas itself had been increasing in cases. And
Right.
they're just like, all right, fuck the mask.
Right. No cussing.
It's like it's playing the worst version of Endgame and like Avengers. Like, instead of getting the Infinity Stones, it's getting all the variants.
Yeah, it's like collecting them all like Pokemon.
Yeah, they got all the variants. Gotta catch them all.